move the hour to today. We've got the Catman with us as well, Adam Catterall, talkSPORT Fight Night host, and obviously part of Fight Disciples as well, alongside Nick Peet. Let's start with the big news. Obviously, we saw, Adam, the press conference, the first one. I think there's going to be 3, isn't there? I think there's going to be one in London and one in New York for AJ versus Oleksander Usyk. What did you make of it all?
I think from a verbal point of view, everything that I expected. It's always quite tame, very respectful, no real fireworks. I did a piece yesterday with a body language expert to see if we could pick anything out of it and as to who got the upper hand. We both concluded that there was elements of nerves from both guys, but one guy managed to keep his physical responses to his emotional nervousness under wraps.
Who was that guy? Who?
And he concluded that Oleksander Usyk managed to keep himself under control more so than Anthony Joshua. We did quite a big piece on who broke the stare. They were looking into each other's eyes very lovingly for a long period of time, weren't they? Listen, at the end of the day, we can read into body language, we can read into where people's heads are at. I don't think any of it matters once the first bell goes. It's going to come down to how Anthony Joshua applies himself in this second fight, because we kind of know what Oleksander Usyk's going to do. Yeah,
I guess we do. Size. Let's talk about that. There's a lot of people saying that Oleksander Usyk looks a lot bigger. Obviously, he's now a full heavyweight, right? I know the people like to make a joke about AJ got beat by a cruiserweight. Oleksander Usyk's a heavyweight. He's been a heavyweight for 4 years. What do you make of him? He looks a bit bulkier, I felt.
Yeah, there was a rumour going round during, obviously, the conflict that's happening between Russia and Ukraine at the moment, that he lost a considerable amount of weight. And listen, fully understandable. Obviously, when family members and various people that he loves dearly are under threat, that worry is going to take its toll. But yes, this week when we saw him, he looked a good size. He looks his normal size from a physical aspect. I know that he's been locked away training extensively over the last 4 to 5 weeks. So I'm fully expecting. I know there's loads of people that are chatting about where he's going to be at physically, where he's going to be at mentally with everything that's going on in Ukraine. But I'm fully expecting the very best version of Oleksander Usyk, a man that is going to want to obviously showcase not only himself but his country to the world.
Simon, what did you make of it? I'm sure you probably saw the first presser as well.
Well, I think Anthony said what you would expect him to say, which is this is a redemption journey. He's a comeback kid, and this is what he's going to do. But this is a very different dynamic than going back and fighting Andy Ruiz to get a title back from Andy Ruiz and being able to do that at the end of a jab. He's got to fight somebody in a completely different way than he fought him the first time, hasn't he, Adam? He's going to have to go in there, be incredibly brave, jump on this guy and try and get him out of there, which means that he's going to leave himself vulnerable to a master tactician. But I do feel, the more I look at this fight, Adam, and you and I have kicked this around previously, I do feel that there is a twist in this, and I do feel that this would be the ultimate redemption story, and I wouldn't be surprised if Anthony, with all the momentum that goes with Joshua, if he can get this inherent belief back that he had once upon a time, which I think would probably knocked out of him a little bit with Klitschko knockdown and knocked out of him a little bit with Ruiz. If we can get an element of that back, this is not necessarily a foregone conclusion, is it, Adam?
No, and that's the key thing. You've hit the nail on the head. This is not a physical problem, in my opinion, for Anthony Joshua. He's got all the physical attributes. He's got to, I know this is going to sound cheesy, but he's got to go and find that eye of the tiger again. What was with him pre-Klitschko, I agree that is the turning point where he starts to change his style and he's boxing behind the jab and he wants to become more of a rounded boxer. He needs to go back into that wrecking machine. And if whatever's going on between his ears, if Robert Garcia can drag that out of him and he's willing to put himself at risk, absolutely, it's not a foregone conclusion. He can do it because the physical attributes are there.
Adam, can I just ask is the mountain not even bigger now than when he fought him the first time because he's been beaten? So if I relate it to playing football, if you play someone a couple of weeks ago and they give you a good hiding, when your Arsenal team, I remember, gave us a good hiding when they were an invincible team, and you played them the next time, in your mind you're walking out thinking, oh no, we're up against the Henry's here again, that type of mentality. You in terms of yes, physically, of course he's capable, but that mindset of when someone's give you a good hiding, which is ultimately what he did, that must be enormous to try and overcome.
Absolutely, but he fought the wrong fight himself in that first fight. If we're going to use a football comparison, for example, Champions League final when City played Chelsea.
Yeah.
Pep Guardiola played Gundogan as a defensive midfielder, didn't he? When he's got Rodri there and he's got Fernandinho there. And that's probably the main reason as to why they didn't do what Man City normally do in that particular fight, in that particular match. Next time they play Chelsea, he ain't going to do that. Anthony, it's a tactic thing that he got wrong the first time around. He's got the attributes to play his game, and that's the key thing that he's got to do. Don't get me wrong, he could still get beat because Usyk is elite. There's no doubt about that. But he's got to do what he does. Don't do what he thinks is the right way of going about it. Go and be him, and that will give him the best opportunity to win this fight.
I guess another element to add to it as well was Robert Garcia, obviously his new trainer that's come in. And what was key, and I remember saying this on my own YouTube channel, that Robert Garcia has probably secretly been working with AJ for a few months before he announced it. And he did. He let loose that, obviously, I've been with AJ since December, back and forth. So that, obviously, look, you still need more than, I think, one camp to kind of get in sync with a new trainer. But that's long enough now. December to August, you can pick up things, surely. Enough to be Usyk, we don't know, but that's good news for AJ fans, knowing he's been with Garcia since December.
Yeah, absolutely. My only critique of it, and I said this with you guys last week, was that they're doing this in England. They brought Robert Garcia over here. I would much rather have him gone over to California and worked in Robert Garcia's gym over there, away from maybe any distractions that are here in the UK. I say all Robert.
It's interesting
Garcia's
what he said yesterday, Adam, wasn't it, Garcia? Because he talked about, if we have to, we can box as well if we want to.
Yeah.
But he pretty much said that's not where we're coming from in this fight.
Yeah. I think there's got to be moments where he does give different looks. You've got to keep someone like Usyk thinking, at least make him think you're going to do something.
And not come forward in straight lines.
Yeah, absolutely. But the main essence of this is throwing threes, fours and fives.
Yeah, throwing clusters. Yeah.
Of which Anthony Joshua has done in the past. And again, we've kicked this around many times, Simon, where we think that Klitschko fight just maybe... Yeah. I'm not saying gunshot, but just held him back a touch. He needs to eradicate whatever that is that's holding him back in his head.
Do we know how well Usyk takes big shots?
Well, listen, Anthony Joshua caught him a couple of times, didn't he? In the amateurs, he's been in with some big guys.
But did he really sit down in his punches with Usyk? Because I
wouldn't say he did.
No,
I wouldn't say he did.
I don't think he's felt the full power of a fully fledged heavyweight yet.
Yeah.
Or
I'd agree with that, and I believe that you guys have got Joe Joyce as a guest a little bit later on. This is a man that's danced with him in the amateurs. Maybe he's the perfect person to ask because he's given him a couple of clips during their bouts. We're going to find out, aren't we? Because for Anthony Joshua to win this fight, he has to clip him because he's not outboxing him. He's not doing him over 12 rounds. He has to stop the guy.
Danny, can I ask you, someone that kind of, in and out of boxing, you mentioned to me earlier, you like some of the big fights. Has AJ's sort of superstardom waned for you when you think of what AJ was 4 years ago where, he's on the back pages with footballers, he's competing with them? Has it waned a little bit for you?
Well, yeah, partly I think because of Tyson Fury's journey as well, and being on this show and listening to Simon and Jim and the experts we have on, I've been educated a lot, and I think Tyson Fury's journey for me has been more relatable, and more heroic in many ways.
A bit more of an open book.
Yeah,
so you kind of understand
and more charismatic. Although I do admire Anthony Joshua, so I've kind of gone from one camp to the other based on the education I've been given in here. But I still got a lot of admiration for where Anthony Joshua's come from, what he's done with his life. I mean,
he deserves the hype of the footballers because the world heavyweight champion is a unique thing. Take it back to 30, 40 years ago with Muhammad Ali, or maybe 50 years ago strolling around. The world heavyweight champion had a unique status. Yeah. The only thing I'd say about Anthony is I do think there's been a lot of hype that has not been sort of backed up in the opponent roster that he's fought. Now, the people will say, so is Fury. So is Fury. Fury has only fought Deontay Wilder. And I do make that accusation that Fury needs to come back and fight Anthony Joshua, Alexander Usyk.
I think the problem for AJ... And look,
he beat Klitschko when Klitschko was
I think there's some good
one.
names on there. And I know people will come at me and say Parker, Ruiz aren't good names. I think the problem for
Dominic
AJ...
Brazil, Eric Molina.
The biggest problem is that the two biggest names in this era, Tyson Fury and Wilder, he's not fought them. I think that's the biggest names. The resume is actually quite good. But you can't have gone through this resume without having fought Wilder and Fury. That's the biggest problem for AJ I think we're going to have. If he loses, Adam, and look, I'm an AJ fan openly, I hope he doesn't lose. If he loses, I mean, he signed this big deal with
where
the
does
Zone.
He land?
Yeah, where does he land? I mean, does he go from stadiums to arenas now? What happens?
It's such a difficult question because first and foremost you've got to ask where his head will be at because his rhetoric has always been road to undisputed, hasn't it?
Yeah.
So that takes a massive knockback. There's no doubt about that. Can he get back to that top table? Of course he can, because not everybody's going to be around forever. The way that this game works, it's crackers because those belts will become fragmented. There'll be opportunities, I've no doubt, that will arise. And you know what sanctioning bodies are like? They're like a few quid, and that man makes a few quid in the world of boxing, doesn't he? So the opportunities will be there. I think it's going to come down to him psychologically as to whether he's a wealthy guy. Does he want to go and do it? if he wants to go and do it, I think opportunities will be there, but they're not going to be there immediately.
What is that top? If you've got no Tyson Fury, if we believe Tyson, which none of us do, but if we believe him taking him at his face value, what does that top table look like?
Can I tell you? Can I tell you what it is? I've got it. Chaos in Lagos, Wilder versus AJ. It's perfect, isn't it? Chaos in Lagos. Don't nick it, Adam. I've already copyrighted it.
Mate.
It's perfect, isn't it? It is perfect.